Hello, everybody. Jess, can you hear me? And do I have an echo?
I can hear you, and you do not have an echo.
Woo! Winning! Okay. Welcome, everyone, to this week's installment of Millie's Industry Monday. This is our last event of the semester. So we're very excited to be able to bring you something every week, and stay tuned for what the summer might hold. My name is Ali Emmerich, and I'm the Program Director of Arts Education out of Student Life, and I'm joined by my colleague, Jess.
Hi, I'm Jess. I'm the theater coordinator for the Glicker-Milstein Theater in Student Life. And we're also joined with Kalina Ko. She's one of our student technicians and is also graduating in like 2 weeks. I'll miss you so much.
I miss you too. Crazy. So I'm Kalina. I'm a senior at Barnard, about to graduate. Crazy. And during non-COVID times, I work in the GMT as a student tech. And also during non-COVID times and during COVID times, I do some stuff with student theater, primarily nomads.
Wonderful. And you have held roles in both lighting, directing, stage management. You've done it all, haven't you?
A little bit. Some. I wouldn't say all. I've done some. I've been around.
Great. I love it. And we are joined with our guest this week, Eric Haugen. Eric, would you give us a little introduction? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm first of all, I'm glad to be here. This is great. And, I love doing these kinds of things. So I am currently an assistant professor at DeSales University in Center Valley, Pennsylvania, which is the home of the Pennsylvania Shakespeare Festival, also the alma mater of Ali Emmerich.
Story.
Which is where I met her years and years ago. Well, we won't say how many years ago.
Thank you.
I've been here at DeSales as the professor of lighting for the past almost 3 years now. Prior to that,
and we just lost Eric. Well, while we're waiting for Eric to rejoin us, Kalina, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experiences in the different roles that you've held?
Yeah, they've all been. I am amazed that people have let me occupy all of these roles, but it has been a wonderful learning experience. They're all
I'm back.
We have Eric back.
That was weird.
That was strange. You just jumped off the stream.
I didn't catch anything. It wasn't
okay because Kalina told us that she had a variety of experiences in the theater, so it was okay.
Oh, good.
The last thing we heard from you was that you've been at DeSales for about 3 years, and prior to that,
and
now you left us hanging.
Prior to that. Okay.
All right, you're still good.
So prior to that, I've been working in the business for about 30 years now, and I had and still have a company that I run called Luminous Design Studios, and that sort of company it's still in process and still working, and I still do things under that banner. But because I'm now teaching, I don't do as much through that, but I still keep quite busy whenever I can to slip out and do projects under the banner of Luminous Design Studios. And summertime is actually a great time to do that because I'm not here at DeSales. I'm off doing other projects. So I've got, I started out as a background in theatrical design. Went to the University of Iowa for my undergraduate work, which is where I was born and grew up in the Midwest. And then did my graduate work, got an MFA at NYU there in beautiful New York City. And we lived in New York for a couple of years after that, and then ended up moving down to Orlando, Florida, and had spent about the last 25 years in Orlando prior to moving here about 3 years ago up into Pennsylvania. So I have had a myriad of experiences, and this is something that I really like to talk about, where I started in theater. And then I sort of moved into doing some corporate, work, some corporate theater, trade shows, business meetings, that sort of thing, because I was in Orlando, and that's where a lot of that stuff happens. Then I sort of got moved into doing some theme park work. So I worked for a company for a while that was doing all sorts of themed entertainment design, and learned that sort of end of the business. All the while still keeping my hand in theater and doing as much theater as I could, because that really is my passion and my drive. I then, through another connection I had, was asked to sort of get my hand into television. And I sort of moved into that and have been doing television for the last probably almost 20 years, 15, 20 years now, something like that, and have made quite a career doing that. So that's where my main focus is right now, outside of my time as a professor and my work in the theater. But I feel like I've got this whole sort of myriad of experiences. So what I like to tell my students is, if you're studying lighting design in theater, you are not necessarily, you don't have to go down that path and just do theater. And, there's a pandemic, I know, what do you do? Everything gets shut down, you can't work. I've been working in the last year in broadcast, because broadcast has been happening in some way, in a different way, different manner. But that's continued, and I've had jobs in broadcast that have been going on. There are certainly jobs in themed entertainment that are still happening, that, and other stuff is coming back. So having that diverse sort of background has really helped me in terms of continuing work throughout my career and keeping busy all the time. When there's no work in one field, I find work in another field, et cetera, et cetera. So really, in a nutshell, that's kind of what I've been doing. Yeah.
And you kind of answered already, the question I like to ask about how you've kind of ended up where you are, but is there any, further detail you can give us on kind of that journey? And now you're suddenly in teaching. So how does one go from, I was a designer in theater, I did some theme park, I did some broadcast, and now I'm teaching. Can you tell us a little bit more about that path?
Yeah, sure. So, when I first started out, probably about 30 years ago, 30 years ago, that's a long time. I was not really interested in teaching. I felt like that was not my path, that I was young. I wanted to pursue a professional career. And, but in the back of my mind, it was sort of at some point, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. And I feel like I've had a very fulfilling and satisfying professional career through my life. And I got to the point where I started to think about it and thought, well, I've learned a lot. I have a lot of experience in theater, in dance, in television, in broadcast, all these different disciplines, themed entertainment. I've done some architectural lighting, pretty much everything. And I thought, it's really time for me to start giving back to the younger generation and teaching them, and to see how they grow. And that's what I really thrive on right now, is when I have students and, you see something click, like, oh, they get it. And it's really satisfying to see that happen. And I feel like I'm in a good position now where I can do that, but I can also still have the career outside the professorship, where I can still keep my hand on what's going on professionally. And, I'm not one of those professors who sort of takes a job and just never works professionally again, and technology bypasses you and new styles bypass you. You're kind of doing the same thing over and over again. I've seen that happen in a number of times. So I've made a conscious effort to not do that. I want to keep my experience going and keep learning, because I feel like we all learn throughout our careers and throughout our lives. We're always learning. There's always something new out there. So I want to keep up with that. And, I just this last week was introduced to the Source 4 Luster Series 3 fixture, which has just come out, brand new, really exciting to me anyway. And I had a demo virtually that we had in front of our class, my design class. They were excited about it. I'm hoping to get a new fixture in to test it out. So I'm always looking for new things.
That's great. I know that you and I have had conversations about why being in higher ed, it's almost even more important to stay current, because you are training up who's coming up next, and you're helping build that life of the industry, really.
Right.
So I know that Kalina, actually, before we go on, can you just define for us what a fixture is and why this particular Source 4 is interesting to you? Because I know we have a lot of viewers who aren't well versed in the technology of the theater.
Gotcha. Okay. So brief history, theatrical lighting started out, with incandescent fixtures way back when electricity was first invented. You stuck a light bulb inside of a reflector and put a lens in front of it, and you got some semblance of light coming out of it. And you could put a piece of gel, colored plastic or whatever in front of that to get a color. And so you started to get light that you could project on stage. That's a lighting fixture. And the design of a lighting fixture, although it has changed and improved over the years, has pretty much stayed the same. It's a lamp inside of a reflector spitting out light and coming out of lens and projected on stage. Well, we're now into the LED revolution. So I don't know, what was it, 10 years ago or whatever, that ETC came out with, and ETC is a manufacturer of lighting equipment, came out with a lighting fixture that sort of replaces the incandescent lighting fixture, which is called the Source 4. And it was LED based, and it had a number of colors. You could color change using this fixture. It had a pretty good variety of color, and it would act in much a similar way as a regular sort of Source 4, an incandescent Source 4. You could use shutters to shape the light, and you could put a template or a gobo inside the fixture to project a pattern on stage. But it had some limitations in terms of the color and the brightness, and that fixture didn't have some of the wavelengths that you find in the warm incandescent light. And then they came out with what's called the Series 2 fixture. They improved the brightness, they improved the efficiency, they added another color in there, and it really became much more usable, but it still was lacking. If you put that fixture next to a standard Source 4 incandescent fixture, and shown them both on somebody a skin tone, you could tell that the LED was not, and tried to mix the color from for the LED fixture to match what the incandescent fixture was. It just didn't come to life. There wasn't the life in there because those wavelengths still didn't exist in the LED fixture. And now they've come out with a new series of this fixture called the Series 3, just in the last couple of weeks. And they've added what's called a deep red emitter, which puts a lot more red light into the white light, and more closely, and comes very close to emulating the incandescent fixture. So that to me is exciting because I, up to this point, haven't felt comfortable using those LED fixtures to light from the front of house positions talent on stage. I just felt like the color wasn't there. I've had costume designers who have been upset because the light I put on the costumes isn't, with an LED fixture, isn't quite the same. The fabric doesn't look the same. The colors don't look the same. They don't have the same richness or brightness. And I think now, and I've not seen this in person yet, and I hope to have a demo in person fairly soon. But from what they're claiming, and from what I've seen in this virtual demo, I think they are almost there. So it's exciting to me as a lighting designer because I think I can now start to replace all my fixtures in the theater with LED fixtures and still get the same quality of light. So that's sort of the long explanation of.
No, that was I feel like a really good lesson.
Yeah, well, we're still on this lesson. I think there's a couple points to point out that I think maybe if you could talk about why people were excited to move towards LEDs, both from an energy perspective, but also from labor and time put in.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's always the energy perspective of, and we all know that in our own homes, where where you used to have a 60-watt light bulb and you'd screw it in, and a year or 9 months down the line it would burn out and you'd have to go replace it and screw in another one, and you look at your electric bill and it's drawing 60 watts of power and whatever, and and it's expensive and it puts off heat, and that adds to your heating, your cooling bill in your house, etc. So now we have gone to LED fixtures, the lighting, and you've got an LED lamp and you screw that in, and that's going to last, who knows, 10 years, 15 years, depending on how long you use it, maybe 20 years, I don't know. So it's got a huge long life. Instead of drawing 60 watts, maybe it's drawing 3 watts. So it's a much lower wattage fixture drawing less power. So you're saving energy. It's not putting out the heat that an incandescent fixture puts out. So it's the same in the theater, whereas, if we're looking at a theatrical fixture, we want to be able to save energy, one, because I think that's important. And we as creative theater artists, I think, have a responsibility to our planet to think about that. So that's a big factor. Two, it's the labor, it's the lamp life. I hang an LED fixture and it's going to stay there and last for a long, long time. I don't have to, worry about every couple months, the light burns out and somebody has to go replace it. And when they're replacing that lamp, it gets knocked out of focus, and somebody doesn't know what the focus is supposed to be, and all of a sudden the show just falls apart because nobody is keeping it up. So that's a really good thing. But also, what it allows us to do is when you put in color changing LEDs in a fixture, it opens up a myriad of things. You can replace a number of fixtures, which you used to have. You have a blue light and a red light and a green light or whatever, and you would then mix colors or put in whatever colors you wanted, and you'd have to add more lights if you had a specific color that you wanted that you couldn't mix from the other lights. And now I got one fixture doing all of that together. So that's been a great sort of thing in the theater world, to have LED fixtures kind of come into place and be part of our arsenal. So I am, especially here at DeSales, pushing forward, trying to see if we can get more and more LED fixtures. Not just for our productions here, but for our students to learn, because that is the technology that's out there, and that's where the world is going. And they need to be learning what's cutting edge. So I'm pushing for that.
I think that's great. And I, another thing is the space. Like those lamp cabinets aren't going to have to really exist anymore. Like cabinets and cabinets of lamp storage. So that's exciting.
Well, I tell you, I've got a story about this. So I do a lot of broadcast lighting, and a good chunk of my career has been lighting television news, and sometimes it's local affiliate stations. Whatever the station is in whatever town that they're doing their NBC. After the NBC news, they do their own local news. So they'll hire me to come in and light that. And if they have incandescent fixtures, I'll come in and I use those and point them all in the right direction. And it's all about the shutter cuts and shaping the light and everything. And then I leave, and I leave documentation for them in terms of what it should be and how it should look. Well, they then will call me up maybe 6-9 months later and say, Eric, this just doesn't look right. Something's off. Something's wrong. So I said, well, send me a picture or show me a video of what's going on. And they'll show me a video, and I can immediately tell, well, somebody's gone in to replace a lamp, and when they did that, they knocked the fixture out of focus. It's it's now pointing at the floor when it was pointing at the talent before, and nobody cared and nobody noticed. But eventually somebody's like, this just doesn't look right. Something's different here, So in a way, I mean, this is good for the end production, because they're not having to go and replace lamps and mess around with stuff and knock things out of focus. But in a way, it's bad for me because I don't get that additional trip and income to go back and fix things.
Yeah.
So, but I would personally, I'd rather have them have a good running long show, that looks good consistently, rather than me coming back every 6 months to fix all the mistakes that they made.
Absolutely. I think, I feel like we could. Well, I remember when I was a first semester freshman, I used to be the assistant for our design professor, and he would design all the scenic elements. And he said, there's this new thing. It's called LEDs. I need you to research it because I think we want to incorporate it in this effect we're doing. Mm-hmm. And it's just so fascinating. I feel like we could do a whole hour chat about how far the technology's come. It's so cheap to buy an LED now, and they dim and stuff now, which they didn't do back then. So I feel like we could definitely talk for hours.
Oh, we certainly could. We certainly, there are cheap LEDs still, which I would shy away from, because maybe they do some of those things, but they don't do them well. And then there's some more expensive ones which are made for the business that we work in, and they react and do things the way we want them to do. So there's still that whole gamut of many different things.
Absolutely. And speaking of research, I see Kalina opening her mouth. I was actually just going to turn it over to you, Kalina. So perfect.
I'd actually love to follow up on that, because I'm curious about so much of everything I have learned, the small baby amount I have learned, has been working with Jess in the GMT and being very hands-on in having the privilege to be very hands-on in the space. And I guess I'm wondering, post taking classes and stuff. How do you maintain, sort of stay on top of the technology and like do it fast in sort of like a quick professional setting?
Can you elaborate on that more? I'm not quite sure what you're.
Yeah, I guess I'm like wondering how one like stays up with the technology that is currently like constantly being produced.
Gotcha.
Like,
Okay.
make sure you're on top of it.
Gotcha. Okay. So I think there are several ways. I mean, it used to be back in the days before the internet. What do you do? I would go to trade shows every single year. There is a trade show that usually happens every fall, which didn't happen this last fall for obvious reasons, but called Live Design International, LDI, which used to happen 1 year in Orlando and 1 year in Las Vegas, and then bounce back and forth. Now they're in Vegas pretty consistently. So I went a couple years ago, and I try and go every couple of years now. And that I feel is a really great way to keep up with technology. All the manufacturers are there, and they're all showing their new products, their new innovations, and of course they're all trying to get you to buy them. And of course you always find faults with them, and well, this was they said it'd do this, but it doesn't really do that. And if they're dancing around that, it's like, oh well, it was supposed to do this, and ignore that, and things like that. So I would go to the LDI trade show. I would go to on the television side of things, the National Association of Broadcasters show, which is in Las Vegas as well, usually in April, right? Actually, it would be going on probably right about now. NAB, which is their big show. And keep up with the television industry. Over the last, who knows, the last 10 years, with the internet out there and people are putting everything online now. So I try to keep up with that in terms of getting on lists for manufacturers, sending out emails saying, hey, we have a new product, we have a new something. I don't always follow those things, but occasionally something will catch my eye. Like this new Source 4 fixture. I got a notification saying, hey, we're going to launch this fixture. It's a new demo. We're gonna take a look at this, and it sounded exciting. So I logged in and poof, there it was, and I got to see that, which is great. But I actively try and get out there as well and try and make sure that I know what's going on. I maintain relationships with people at some of the various lighting shops, and I could call up somebody and say, hey, I heard you have a new something, or can you get me a new fixture? I want to take a look at that because I'm really interested in that. And they will either get it in the shop. I'll go in and take a look at it. I've had cases where they've shipped the fixture out to me either here at my place of business or at my home, or I've even done it on the road a couple times where I was in somewhere in Texas this last year, and there was a new fixture came out. I had happened to know the guy who was repping that fixture. I said, hey, can you ship it to me in this TV studio? He did. I got to take a look at it, so I was actually in the studio looking at it. And to sort of run it through its paces. So, that was great. So I actively try and keep up with new technologies like that.
And even on like a day-to-day basis, Kalina, taking gigs in the industry helps. Going in on calls, everyone's always, it's a team effort. And so everyone's always looking at what they got. You have a fixture you've never worked on before, it's a new fixture, there might be someone else there who's been, this is their 300th time focusing that fixture. Sure. So it's about like, chatting, and there's YouTube channels and, a variety of ways, but for that cutting edge technology, having an in with the distributors or the manufacturers is definitely, it's a great way to go. Yeah,
that helps a lot when you can pick up the phone or send an email to so-and-so at whatever company and say, hey, I heard you have a new something. Can you send me a demo version? And they're happy to do that. They want to get that product out there.
Right.
And you might hear the term shootout. And that means that, there's going to be a location where they're going to demo, usually several different new items. And I know at my previous institution, I would invite everyone around to come to these events. So you can keep your eye out for those as well.
Yep. Yeah, I've been to several of those. That's always a lot of fun to see products back up against each other. Which one does something best. And there's never a product that does everything the best. If there was, we would just be using that light for everything. But there's not, and then there never will be. There's always this one does this a little bit better, and this one does this a little bit better, and this is a better use for that.
Jess, were you going to add something to this?
I was just going to add that, especially for like in the early phases of your career, if you're in an internship position or something along those lines, if there is a piece of technology that you're really excited about, you can always go to the TD or whoever's in that particular role and talk to them about it. And one thing you can suggest if they don't immediately think about it, because as a TD, I can just fully say that I get very engrossed in the thing I'm doing and working on the thing and getting it done. And so until I'm in the off season, I don't think about any new materials or any new anything. And so, you know, maybe be like, hey, there's this light I'm excited about, or there's this soundboard, if you're me, that, you know, I'm excited about. And they could then maybe have those connections that you haven't gotten to develop yet with other members in the industry or houses in the industry who could get you an in-house demo and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean,
and
I got to
always write to us. Like,
yes.
sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. That's okay. I was going to say, you know, as I always tell my students, you know, get out there, knock on doors, don't be shy. You know, we in this world are, as professionals, are excited about having people come up and say, hey, you know, can I shadow you on this project? Can I see what you're doing?
Yes.
You know, can you share this with me? We may not always have the time right then, but, you know, most of the people I know in the industry are happy to do that, and I'd love to do that sort of thing. That's why I'm doing this, you know, this broadcast today. I'm like, I love sharing this kind of stuff with people, and, you know, helping out younger generations, up and coming designers and technicians. I think it's fantastic. You know?
Yes, definitely. I love it. And as you can tell, like, you know, people are passionate about their fields.
Oh yeah.
Kalina, I know you have studied Eric's bio. I know you have a whole list of questions, and we are just sticking on technology and LEDs. So please, let's ask some of your questions.
So shift us a little bit away from technology. I mean, the first thing that becomes apparent when reading your bio is just the sheer amount of like variety of projects you've done, from like the Olympics to theme park rides to museums. And I guess I'm just wondering how do you approach these projects differently? Are there special considerations for different situations? And also sort of, you know, how you got into this like variety of projects. I know you talked a little bit about it at the beginning, but to be frank, I'm also just very curious about the Olympics because it's the Olympics.
Yeah, because it's the Olympics, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, let me speak to that first. So, I was at the Rio Summer Olympics, the last games that were held in Rio in Brazil, and I was working for NBC, and I had been hired as what they call the roving LD, roving lighting designer, and my job was to go from venue to venue and make sure the lighting was set up properly for all of the commentators. So I'd go to the soccer venue and make sure the lighting was set up for that, and the beach volleyball venue and the swimming venue, whatever. And so sometimes it was just a couple lights, you know, because there was just one person standing there, a talking head, you know, but they needed to be lit well and balanced to the background, etc. So I really enjoyed that. I got a chance to go to all the Olympic venues and sort of tour around and see a lot of different things. It was fantastic. I have colleagues of mine who are working for the Olympics as well, and they were doing a fantastic job in the studio. So they were there lighting the broadcast from the studio every day and every night, but they never got out. You know, that's all they saw all day and night was the studio. So I love that job. I got to see the city and see the sights. In the upcoming Tokyo Games, I'll be doing the same thing. So I'll be over there. So if you're watching the games this summer and you see a commentator standing in front of the swimming venue or the soccer venue or wherever, track and field, most likely I will have lit that person, and possibly I'll be standing behind the camera at the time that's happening.
Kalina,
so just
you can say you
think
knew
about
him.
Me. That's right. I gotta say also the really cool thing was I got to be in the stadium during the opening ceremonies and the closing ceremonies, which was fantastic. I had nothing to do with the lighting of those ceremonies. That was totally somebody else. But I was there helping with the lighting of the NBC broadcast, and just got to be a part of that. And for the most part, it was just sit back and watch because, you know, that's what the show was just happening. So my only part was really beginning and end of that, where the commentators were on talking about, you know, what was going to happen and, you know, what had happened. But it was just a fantastic experience. I really loved that. So that's the Olympics story. I've also been in Sochi for the Winter Olympics. Was working for ABC, which does not have the contract to broadcast the games. So they're sort of a rogue sort of network. They cannot even be in the Olympic Park because they don't have the rights. So they set up, at least in Sochi, they set up a broadcast studio up on top of a hotel that was overlooking the Olympic Park, literally on the roof, made out of plywood, with a window sort of overlooking that. And they had their anchor sitting up there. And I lit that for both daytime and nighttime, overlooking the venues in the background, which was kind of fun. But I didn't even go in the Olympic Park because I didn't have credentials to get in at that point and for those games. But coming up for Tokyo, I'll be there. So anyway, that's the Olympic part of it.
Exciting. And did you find, I guess I'm wondering a little bit sort of the approach as well. Do you find that a lot of like your theatrical experience is highly transferable, or was it like a perspective shift having to light broadcasts and?
It's a little bit of both. I feel like the theatrical background has created a base and a really good solid base for everything that I've done outside of the theater. I feel like, if I had started out as an architectural lighting designer and then I tried to go and move into theater or move into something else, I would have no clue what I'm doing because it's such a different game, and the equipment's so different. And that sort of works the other way where theatrical wise, you're going into, learning broadcast lighting and broadcast techniques and equipment, or architectural broadcast techniques, or architectural, equipment and techniques and such. And I've been able to make those shifts and learn those over the years. But I felt like, my theatrical training really came into play for all of that. That was extremely important because I've learned about, angle and color and intensity and, quality of light and all those things that are transferable to anything you do, lighting wise, So it was really just more about learning the new equipment that you have to learn. I remember my first time lighting broadcast outdoors, which I'd never done before. I'd only been in a studio. And all of a sudden I'm outside, I'm lighting a certain presidential candidate who was out running for office a few years ago, a number of years ago, actually. And without mentioning any names. And he was doing a rally, and I was actually hired to go out and sort of follow him around and light his events. And here it is, my first time out of the studio, lighting outdoors. And I called up a friend of mine, like, what am I doing? I don't know what this is. This is like, there's a big ball up here called the sun, and how do I compete with that? And, the advice he gave me was, it's just like lighting in the studio, only you're not dealing with a 500 watt Fresnel or 1,000 watt Fresnel. You're dealing with a 10,000 watt Fresnel or an HMI fixture that's, huge. It's just the same equipment. It's just bigger, and I thought about that and I thought, oh, that's absolutely right. I don't need to be worried about this. It's the same thing, just bigger equipment, brighter equipment, So, same thing with going into broadcast and themed entertainment and sort of moving from theater to all those other things. The equipment's a little bit different, but the concepts and the thoughts are the same, and you sort of translate it from one to the other.
Have you had a favorite project?
Oh boy, pick a genre. I've got favorite projects in it's pretty much everything I've done.
We'll say themed entertainment.
Okay, so that would definitely be Universal Studios Singapore, where I was hired to light the Revenge of the Mummy ride that had been lit before and had been done in Orlando. And they were taking that ride and sort of, recreating it in Singapore. So I didn't create the original lighting for that. So I had to recreate it for Singapore. But they also changed some of the ride and some of the things that were happening. So I got to be creative and to sort of, move into that area of things. And that was just a fascinating thing. I rode the Revenge of the Mummy roller coaster. I don't know how many times. I got sick of it. It's like, I can't ride it again. It's like,
That was my favorite at Universal, by the way. I'm not
Oh,
a big
yeah.
roller coaster person in general, but I loved that ride.
Oh, it's a great ride. It's fantastic. And unfortunately, it ruined it for me, because I'm like, oh, here we go again. And it goes up the hill, around the corner. Okay, fine. So that was probably my favorite themed entertainment job that I've done.
Yeah. Well, as we come up sort of to the end of the hour, I'd love to shift a little bit to a more college-y question, I'll say.
Sure.
But you are a professor, and I guess I'm wondering what is like the biggest takeaway you hope your students will have after taking your classes, or the biggest takeaway a college student could leave college with?
Boy, I feel like I'm teaching lighting and teaching theater, but I'm also teaching life skills, and I'm also teaching, how to function as an adult and how to survive in this world, which has gone crazy, And I don't know. I kind of see that as my most important role. I've got students who will come in and sit in my office across from my desk here, and just want to talk about whatever in their life, things are going wrong, or how, getting advice. How do I deal with this? How do I find a job? What do I do next? Do I reach out to this person I'm scared to? What do I do? And giving that kind of advice, I think, is really important. And I think that almost trumps everything else that I'm doing here, is to create good people, that can get out in the world and be good people. And, if they're good people and good lighting designers, then that's a plus, but if I've helped shape that to be a good person and send them out in the world and they're doing good things, I feel like I've done my job. So I hope that helps answer the question. I don't know.
Great. That answers my question. I guess sort of thinking about the present moment right now, I'm wondering if you have thoughts on sort of how this crazy pandemic will shape the hopefully soon to come post-pandemic theater world.
Yeah, so a lot of people have been thinking about that, and and I have had I had students who graduated last year, right at the beginning of the pandemic, and our productions got shut down right when we were going to open them. They had summer jobs, and all of a sudden all those jobs went away because nobody was producing anything. And here they are a year later, and they have not been working in the field that they that they had studied, and there's frustration there. And I know I've got students who are graduating this year who are feeling the same. They're anxious. They're wondering, did I make a right choice? Is this a career that I should be doing, because it's so hooked to things like a pandemic. That happens, and all of a sudden we can't do anything. We're shut down. So I think that, we are definitely coming back. I know we at DeSales here are looking at putting live audiences back into the theater in the fall. We're hoping that can happen. We have put out some surveys to our audiences to see how comfortable they would be. Would you be comfortable sitting in a theater 6 feet apart from somebody, 3 feet apart from somebody? What's your comfort level? So we're looking at that.
And just to jump in there for a second, they have a box office. They're run by a box office. And so at that program, they have a base of subscribers that they can then communicate with, because they have their information. Just wanted to clarify that, because we don't run on box office over here. Gotcha.
Yeah, we do have a box office and a whole base of subscribers here that we rely on, actually, as for a lot of our productions. Outside of this building, in the professional world, I know there are theaters that are opening up and doing productions now. There's a Shakespeare company that I've worked with in the past down in Orlando, who's right now doing a production of Midsummer Night's Dream. They have moved to an outdoor venue. That's where they started years and years ago, and they hadn't produced there in a number of years, but they moved to the outdoor production because that was what was safe, and that's what Actors Equity, the union of actors, has said, you can do that, and we feel comfortable having our members.
Actors and stage managers.
Yes, I'm sorry, actors and stage managers. Yes, thank you. So things are starting to get better, and we are very resilient as artists, and I think we are finding ways to make and continue our arts And I think that's important. I also feel like there are probably a number of people who have been out of work for a year and have said, that's enough. I found another job. I'm making money doing that. It's a lot easier. It's a 9-to-5 job. I don't have to work crazy hours. I'm not going back to the theater. So I think when those theater jobs come back, they're going to be open. There'll be opportunities for younger people to come in and say, oh, hey, I'm out of school. I studied this. Maybe there was a guy who was doing this job for 30 years and he just decided this is enough. He wanted to go off and do something else. So I think that is going to open up some possibilities for people who are coming out of college right now and hoping to get some work in the theater. So
and I think that on building from what you said, I think the industry has been given time to reflect on these crazy hours
yes.
and what is realistic to ask people. And I know there's a big movement in the industry to really examine this and what we're doing here. So definitely.
Yeah, that's huge now. A lot of people are talking about that of, do we really need to do 10 out of 12s to tech a show? Do we need to be working that number of hours? The actors work that number of hours, but everybody else seems to work, 14 hours.
15, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right, whatever it is, just to get to that point. So that's a very good point.
I would love to ask you a follow-up question to Kalina's question.
Sure.
As someone who is, well-versed in both broadcast lighting and live event lighting, do you feel that, not only in your professional life, but also in what you can convey to students, will there be more of a holistic integration of the two? I think we're probably never going to see live streams go away now.
Yes,
so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, dual area.
Yeah, that's a great point. When we found out that we were not going to be doing live productions this year here at DeSales, and we decided we are going to video record all of ours. And we hired a professional company to come in and do the video recording and editing here. Other companies have done it in-house or have other ways that they're approaching it. But I felt very comfortable shifting from the theater into more of a video based production because of my experience. And I took this as an opportunity to teach my students that sort of thing as well. So I took the pandemic as okay, we can't do this, but we're going to do this instead. And there's an opportunity to learn here, and to gain more experience and things that'll be valuable and, knowledge that you'll have when you come out of here that you may not have normally had. So I've sort of shifted things around and said, well, the pandemic's not, a horrible thing for us. We're making it, a good thing. Not that it's a good thing, but it's, what I'm saying.
You're finding the silver lining.
I'm making lemonade out of lemons.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I added some sugar. It's fine.
Love it.
Yeah, but you're right. That's, I've heard a lot of people talk about this. We don't think that's going to go away. We were just actually having a conversation here this morning about future productions, and are we going to record them and then stream them as well as have a live audience and do a mix of the two? Because what we've found here is we've been able to reach a completely different audience by streaming productions. That people who wouldn't normally come to the theater are now buying tickets, and we're actually selling tickets for our stream productions. And they're the theater goers. They're buying tickets, and we're reaching new people. Will they get their butts into the seat? I don't know. But if we can reach them that way, and we could still get the theater goers to come back in the theater, we've opened up our audience to a whole nother level here. So, I think that's really important to do. Yeah, and it's certainly something that we're going to continue doing.
Hear more even about, obviously, and then see how that progresses. I imagine, Sunday afternoon, Sunday matinee audiences are probably still going to want to be in those seats, but perhaps, your high school students who maybe want to go to the theater, they're going to get around at home, hanging out with their friends to watch it. You're right. Yeah. It's going to open up great opportunity.
Yeah.
So really Kalina, what questions do you have for Eric?
I'm trying to decide on one that is not too long, given that we only have a short amount of time.
I can make it as long or short as you want. I can. As far as an answer goes, I could talk forever.
We're in the speed answer round now.
Okay, speed answer. Right,
okay,
right.
well, this is not an appropriate question for a speed answer round, but I'm going to throw it anyways. Maybe I should have asked this at the beginning, but why lights for you?
White lights?
Yeah, why lights?
Wow. Okay, that's a great question. I think as a lot of people in this business, I started out as an actor in junior high school. That's how I got first involved in theater. I thought, this is cool. Actually, it was a girl. There was a girl, and I thought she was cute, and she was in the theater program. And I thought, oh, hey, I'm gonna audition for the next play because maybe we'll do the scene together. I don't know, maybe something will happen. Never happened, but I got the theater bug, and then I got to high school and I thought I was the best actor ever. And this is going to be my career. I'm going to be an actor. And all of a sudden I'm not being cast in anything. And I realized after my first year in high school, well, geez, I guess I'm not good. I was cast in junior high because I was one of the only guys who were auditioning. But I love what I'm doing. And I was lucky to have a high school technical director who was very supportive and very active. And, I went to him and I said, hey, what? I want to just do something backstage. What can I do? And he said, well, the guy who used to do the lighting for our productions here, he just graduated. So we need somebody to do that. You want to do that? I said, yeah, sure. Sounds like fun. Never looked back. Wow. I'm, that I caught the bug. And as soon as I was my senior year in high school, I'm like, I know what I'm going to do with my life. This is what I want to do. I was that lucky person who, figured out what I want to do with my life early enough and was able to continue that throughout my career and actually pursue that. So it all comes down to that one girl though, that I, had a crush on. So if it weren't for her, I would not be here where I am right now. She doesn't know this. We've lost touch since high school, but if I ever get back in touch with her, I'm going to tell her this.
That's great.
Yeah.
Any other speed round questions, Kalina?
No, I'll save the rest of my questions for a later time.
Okay, Jess, how about you? Any questions? Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Okay, I was just going to say, also, I give a lot of the credit to where I am now to that high school technical director who took me under his wing and pointed me in the right direction. And in fact, I'm still in touch with him. We still email back and forth. I still see him occasionally. It's great. And, if you can find somebody in your life who is that person, who cares about you and who will drive you and, understand what you're all about and put you on the right path, that is invaluable. So I've had that in my life. I hope that I can be that person to somebody, that when I'm retired and somebody will come back to me and say, hey, the reason I'm doing what I'm doing now is because of you. And, and if they're successful and they're happy, that will make my life worth living. I feel like I've done something right.
That's great. Jess, any questions that you would like to ask Eric?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if Helen is still watching, but one of Helen's favorite questions, Helen is one of our other student technicians, and one of her favorite questions to ask is, can you tell us about a time in your career where you failed and how you got past it? But that's maybe too much of a question to speed run, but it is also one of my favorite questions because I find it very inspirational.
That is a great question. And, if you ever have somebody say, oh, I never failed, I don't have a moment like that, they're lying. There's always a time when you fail. I have a very specific moment that I remember. I was in the middle of grad school. It was a summertime. I was working at a summer stock theater, and the producer took a chance on me to design a show. I was actually working as the production manager for the company, and they were mounting a production, and it was a small production. And the producer kind of said, "Well, okay, you're studying this. We'll let you do it." Great. So we get to tech, and it's summer stock, and it's like wham bam. It's really like fast a turnover. I think we came down on a Sunday after a Sunday matinee, and we opened on a Tuesday or Wednesday. It was like bang, it's a quick turnaround. Well, I got in the situation where I was changing around too much stuff. The master electrician was kind of a mess and wasn't helping me out. And we get to the first tech, and I don't have anything hung. I mean, things are hung, but they're not focused. I can't cue the show. Like, this is the first time it's ever happened in this theater. And I go to the producer and say, I can't tech the show. I'm sorry, I'm not ready. And so she yells at me and is really upset and says, this is the first time it's ever happened. And, so I say, fine, I'm going to go home. I'm going to get a couple hours of sleep. Then I'm going to come back and stay all night long and get this done. And I did, and we had a show. And, it's always haunted me. Like, this is the one thing that I feel like I failed on. And I look back on it now, and it's not, I don't want to point fingers, but there were a lot of things that were happening around that, I didn't have control over.
Yeah, theater's collaborative.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. But I always felt like I failed in that moment. But that has not stopped me from pursuing things, and I learned a lot from that. So what I'm doing now is a lot of based on things I learned, and things like that, where in a situation like that, okay, I can't rehang the entire light plot because we don't have time. I have to make do with what we have, and it's better to make do and have a show than to not have a show at all. So
Absolutely.
that was my one. I've had a couple other failures here and there, but that was the one big thing that sticks out.
Do you feel like as you grow too, though, failures become so reframed? Like, that first failure is always the most painful.
Oh, yeah.
Because you never really make the same magnitude of mistake again.
Right.
I feel like, in my personal experiences.
Right. That was the big one for me. It was like, I thought I was, this great designer, and I had everything under control, and then I just fell apart, and nothing came together the way it was supposed to. So it was huge to me, but I've had things fail since then, and you just kind of you know what to do, or you figure it out, or you work on it, or you just make do, and you learn from it, and you don't make those mistakes again. Yeah.
So we are over time, Eric. I'm so sorry to keep you late. I have one question for you to close with, though.
Sure.
Can you leave our viewers with just a couple words of advice? It can be specifically for the entertainment industry, or it can be for life. Things that they can take away from watching this.
Sure. Something I tell my students is that we're all passionate about what we're doing. We're all hyper focused on what we're studying. I know that I knew from a very early age I wanted to be a lighting designer, and I focused on that, and all of my friends were part of that community and the theater community, and you really get sort of hyper focused on doing that. But I think it's important to reach out and to have friends and experiences that are outside of the theater, outside of your sort of bubble. We learn from that. I have friends who have different political thoughts than I have, and I respect them for that. I don't put them down for that. I don't agree with them, but I respect everybody's opinion, and they were still my friends. And I think that's an important thing these days is that we, as a society, need to be able to listen to other people and understand other points of view. That's probably my biggest thing.
I think that's a great takeaway. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you to Eric for giving us his time and telling us his experiences. And if you have any questions, you can always email us at gmt@barnard.edu. And we are happy to try to help you. Have a wonderful night, everyone, and stay tuned for future events.